Hello, so welcome to all the geeks. So, good evening and
Hello, so
yeah,
welcome to all the geeks. So, good evening and hello, so yeah, welcome to all the geeks. So, good evening and hello, yeah, welcome.
okay. So, here we start. Welcome to all the geeks. So, as we promised, after the success of lot of DSA mock interviews, that you guys were asking that GFG should come up with the system design mock interviews, right? So, after so much discussion and your demand, this is the first time that we are coming up with the system design mock interview, right? And hi. So please, guys, write in the chat that if you are interested for more such system design mock interviews, right? So as you all know, this is a Geek Week going on, right? So it starts from 11th of October to 70th of October. So during this time, I mean, we are going to have lot of good event, right? So first of all, we are having coding contest like Kaun Banega Codepati. We have uh, lots of events on data science. We have lots of event for all the students who are also preparing for GATE exam, and uh, those who are preparing for product based companies. We are going to have streams like system design, streams like SD sheet that we generally do 5 to 6 hour. We solve very good problems from that sheet itself. So a lot of good events are lined up, right? So this system design mock interview was scheduled yesterday, but due to some reason we could not continue it. So today we are going to start with this session, right? So if you are interested, if you want more such session, then please uh, write something on the chat so that uh, we can get the idea if you're interested. And if you have any other doubt regarding the mock interviews, how to apply for mock interviews, or how to get into the high level design, you can write all your doubts in the Google form that is pinned in the chat, right? It's also in the description. Okay, so before we start, I mean, let me introduce you to my guest. So I'll just introduce you to. Okay, awesome, Ishan. So I'll introduce you to one of our mentor, Jay. So I'll just adding him into the stream. Meanwhile, you can write your doubts in the chat, or you can also write in the Google form if you're not if you're feeling shy to ask in the public. Okay. So hi Jay,
Hey,
how are you? Hi.
hi Amit,
So
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. So here I have with me Jay Chakra, and he has a lot of experience in the industry, and uh, he's also been associated with Geeks for Geeks since last, I think, more than a year, and he has been teaching a high level design with us since last 1 year, and lot of he has taught a lot of students for high level design. And today we requested him to join on this Geek Week pre-event. And because Jay, a lot of students ask us because in the past we have conducted DSA mock interviews, but it is not there. Like it's not anywhere in the YouTube. Like there are few YouTube channels that do it, but system design mock interview is not that simple and straight like DSA mock, because you need to be very interactive and lots of discussion needs to be done. So, meanwhile, thank you, Jay, for joining us. Uh, if you want to introduce yourself, Jay, I mean, please go ahead. I mean,
Yeah.
student would love to know more about you who has not attended your classes in the past.
Yeah. Thanks Amit for this kind introduction. So, hi guys, I'm Jay, and I have been associated with Geeks for Geeks for I think more than a year and a half now, and would have taken around 15 plus system design batches. This was a special request, and I said that hey, it would be great to come live and do this kind of a one-to-one session. So, like system design, from my perspective, is like UPSC within computer science. So
Yeah.
things could be from anywhere, right? So it could be from network, it could be from OS, it could be from some complicated algorithms and all. And there is no, I would say, length and breadth of the question. It could be literally anything from the computer science domain. So today, what I suggested is that let's try to emulate a real world interview, like how it goes into company. In most of the company, you get an hour for interview, but in those 1 hour, we'll try to like shorten a bit, and we'll try to finish up our interview in, let's say, 40 to 45 minutes. That's a decent enough time to come up with
Mhm.
day zero kind of an architecture. And here we
Right.
will start with a very small problem because system design interviews could go into a lot of depth. And these interview questions are asked for, let's say, a 3 years experience person, a 6 year experience person, or even a 10-year experience person. So I'm assuming that most of the people here would be lying in the range of 2 to 5 years of experience. So I would pick up a problem which is simple enough as well as a bit complicated so that it fits your needs. Okay, so that's about me. I am hoping to have the candidate here.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
Mohit, right?
Awesome. Awesome. So, guys, I will be adding Mohit into the stream. So, welcome, Mohit. If you're comfortable, you can turn on the camera. Yeah. So, Mohit is with us, guys,
Sure.
and please feel free to welcome him. And since this is a simulation of a real life interview, and Mohit was kind enough to do it with us on live sessions. I mean, feel free to give your suggestions in the live chat. If something you don't understand, I mean, try to write in the chat. We will try to answer it even in the session. In the end of the session, and even after this session is over, we will revert back to you if you fill the form that is given in the chat, right? Yeah. So, so I will be leaving the screen for now, and Jay and Mohit will take the session forward, right? So, thank you guys, and now stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you,
Thank
Amit.
you. Perfect. So, hi, Mohit.
Hi,
Good
Jay.
evening.
Good evening.
And
Very
first
good
of
evening.
all, happy Durga Puja and Dashera to you.
Same to you,
So,
Jay.
yeah, I'm hoping you are having fun and you have like extracted this time out for this mock interview. And I went through the details that was shared with me, and I guess that you are having a good enough experience in backend as well as front end. So,
Yeah.
first of all, I would like to ask, have you taken any system design interview earlier?
So this is my first system design interview. I have
Okay.
given only fresher level interviews or lesser experience interviews. So I haven't encountered any system design interview before. So and I
Okay.
just started designing systems and doing these things. So I
Oh, that's
started
great.
like 1 month back only. So I'm quite
Got
a
it.
beginner currently.
Got it. Got it. Not a problem. So, let's start right away. You have experience in backend engineering, right? You have written
Yeah.
certain like services and all. Perfect. So, let's start with a very simple problem. And during the course of the mock, don't even consider that I'm an interviewer. Think of it like a colleague with whom you're talking. Okay. And rather than a system design interview, because this is your first interview, you may be nervous. So just think of it like you are discussing a feature. You are trying to implement a feature in your company, in your business, and you're talking to a colleague. So what are the trade-offs that you take? How do you make decisions for certain element? Okay, those are the things that we will try to debate here. Okay, so let's start with that. Uh, I don't know if I can share something. Okay,
Okay.
so
Below.
would it be okay you can share your screen and share a Google Drive or any like pad that you may have?
Sure. So are you able to see my screen?
I don't know. Give me a moment. No, I don't think so.
Actually shared it.
Yeah, now I guess it is being shared. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
So let's say that you got bored in your present company and you switched job. Okay. And then you joined a company which is building an entirely new product. So let's say you joined certain traditional company who were never exposed to, let's say, web or software led development. So take any traditional company like, let's say, Maruti. Okay.
Okay.
And then you joined them as a senior engineer and they asked you that, hey, we sell car, but nowadays there are good companies entering Indian market, like there is MG Hector, Kia, etc., who offers a lot of features which are not available to us. We are traditional. We don't know anything about software development. And they said that we want to test out this market and we want to build a very, very simple application where I can get information from my car and I can show those information to user. Okay, this is the information that has been given to you. And let's say you are the senior most person who has joined the company. You have a very small set of people. How would you go about designing the system? Like, what are the precautions that you would take? Like, what are the components that you will add? And how would you convince the stakeholders that, hey, this is the choice that I'm going to make?
So
Question
we
is
are
clear?
not
Yeah.
talking. So we are not
Yeah.
talking about the technical software problem. Rather, it's kind of adding features to car, right?
Uh, I would not say that. Let's say the car has, we add certain IoT systems within car, right?
Okay. Okay.
And those could give us certain information. Like, let's say a very simple feature could be, I want to monitor the engine temperature. So I can
Okay.
attach a sensor to the car, which will periodically see that what is the engine temperature. And then I, as a car owner, want to see whether my engine temperature is shooting certain threshold. Okay, I can slow down my car, I can park my car, or I can check that if there are certain radiator or etc which may need to fix up. So this is the very, very basic feature that we need to build.
Okay. Okay. So I need to add, do the whole system design here, or
Exactly.
just mention the. Okay. So I'll start with functional requirements in that case.
Okay.
So basically, we want uh, next gen cars, which basically could take an example of MG Hector, and Maruti is not having some of the features. So if I ask about the feature, we would need a sensor based system
Hmm.
to notify when car is nearby,
Yeah,
some
that
sharp
could be a
objects.
feature. Hmm.
My next question would be, what would be the area of proximity required uh,
So this
for
is
this?
this is just one thing. This is just one feature that you are trying to avoid collision.
Right.
Okay, this could be within the car itself. Okay,
Correct.
now my idea here is that you can capture some of the metrics over time. Like I given you an example that I may want to monitor engine temperature. I may want to monitor, let's say, tire pressure. Okay,
Okay.
I may want to monitor, let's say, the engine oil level of engine oil, or what is the engine oil left in my car. Okay, so all those metrics could be captured via certain sensors within the car, but then I also need to notify the user if certain threshold is breached.
Okay. Got it. So we could have speed based metrics as well, like
Okay,
uh,
yeah.
what's your average speed throughout your journey, and where you could improve or you should slow down in case of areas of hilly areas or some kind of rough
Okay.
areas. So we could provide
Mhm.
that metrics, and also we could provide some metrics to give a better mileage, because we Maruti usually has more Indian customers, which considers mileage based thing as well. So we'll
Yeah.
need good mileage. So we could provide metrics to give better mileage, right?
Mhm.
Next thing which I could consider is we should provide a notification as in where the pressure tire pressure is less than the bare minimum, like 30 to
Mhm.
34. We could
Yeah.
provide that metric as well, right?
Mhm. So you can think of it like, let's say we need to support n metrics. That could be extensible. I have just given you example of one or two metrics. It could be n number of metrics.
Okay. Also, we could provide metrics regarding the car conditions. Let's say if car condition gets worse before the next service time, so we could have
Mhm.
that metric as well.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, this is the bare minimum which I could think of right now.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So maybe we can move on to non-functional.
Okay.
So for non-functional, I would say all the metrics should be reliable. That is, if my car condition is bad, it should show bad. It doesn't show
Right.
bad in case it's good.
Obviously. Yeah.
Also for tire pressure, and it goes for the speed based metrics and mileage based metric as well. So
Mhm.
metrics should be reliable,
Okay.
and our system should be available all the time, whichever the area we are in. I mean, it could be, it should be reliable enough to handle all these requests. Available
Yes,
enough.
you can say that.
Yeah.
Uh, it would be a bit difficult to comment because let's say you are driving your car in a no network zone. Okay. So how would you handle those scenario?
So in that case, there could be some local storage unit which could be fit into the car, and if the network is low, it can store all the data until a good network comes up.
Okay.
This is how it could be achieved. But again, if user stays for no network area for a very long time, then we should handle those error scenarios as well. Like we should
Yep.
notify that we might not be able to provide you the correct metric during this time zone because
Mhm.
you have exceeded this time limit. So we can
Okay.
uh, define a threshold there.
Mhm.
Apart from this, if the system is highly available, uh, it should be secured enough so that no other person could hack into the system and mingle with
Mhm.
any other activity. Like it should not mishandle the car and hack the car and do maybe create an accident or something like that. So it should
Right.
be
Right.
secured enough.
Mhm. So what we can try to do here is we can start with a simple problem statement and then we can try to expand onto it. So the core requirement here is how do you track those metrics? Firstly, how do you collect those metrics? Then how do you show that metrics to user? Let's target this first problem statement and then we can build onto it, like we can add security, we can add authentication, etc.
Okay, so we can make it as a nice to have feature,
Yeah,
maybe to look at in the future.
sure.
Now we'll go into the estimations.
Mhm.
So, uh, so the number of requests per second would be like very high. I would
Mhm.
say maybe like 10,000 even or even more.
Let's say, like, let's try to estimate how many cars. do you expect that Maruti would be having, or how many cars built by Maruti would be plying on Indian roads?
Okay, so I was thinking like it will be having only, we are considering only one car. So okay, so we need to consider all the cars. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it will be, I think it will be more than 10 million requests
yeah. Let's take
per
10 million.
second. Yeah,
Yeah, let's take 10 million cars.
we able to handle. Uh, Apart from this, so the daily active users should also be considered, right?
Yeah. So out of, let's say, those 10 million, you have at any point in time, let's say 10% of the users are active.
Okay,
Most of the time, a car would be either like, let's say, standing in garage or parking lot. So it would be only a certain fraction of time when you would be driving car, right?
correct. Sure. For the estimations, this is only what I could think of right now.
Mhm.
So maybe we can move on to the diagram, system design.
Sure.
Okay. So before that, I'll just write the components
Hmm.
which I'll be using. So the first component which I could think of is uh, so basically if we are going to handle this many amount of requests,
Hmm.
first of all I will have one API gateway.
Okay.
Fine. Next thing, the number of requests is large, so single server won't be able to handle this many requests. So we'll
Hmm.
need load balancer. And
Okay.
since I've worked with AWS ELB, so I would
Hmm.
prefer that AWS
Okay.
Elastic Load Balancer.
Hmm.
Um, Again, the data will be needed to be stored, and we might need some sharding in future. So I'll prefer Amazon DynamoDB
Okay.
store data
So
because once
whatever
we
you are
have.
writing, so I would need logic as to why these components are selected.
Sure. So the only reason for choosing DynamoDB is I think the number of the data is stored will be
Hmm.
very high, and to
Okay.
be able to scale that DB, it will be very difficult at some point of time. So we should be flexible enough to shard our DB into multiple servers horizontally, because
Hmm.
vertical scaling at some point of time will become a little bit hectic. Is what I could
Can
think
we
of.
can we estimate the data? Like what would be the average data that would be generated for, let's say, a year or a 5 year mark?
So we'll have lot of metrics related to speed, tire pressure, and car condition,
Let's
and we are
start with
having that.
one. Let's start with
Yeah.
one. Let's start with just a simple metrics that you are trying to capture engine temperature.
Okay.
Okay.
So for that, uh, I think for each and every car, for every second, it should be stored, right? So it might
Okay.
go into uh, for for every day, it will be like lots of GBs, and
Okay.
we
Let's try to
store it in.
estimate with a simple like let's say we estimated that we have around 10 million cars, and out of that active cars at any point in time would be 1 million, right? So at any
Okay.
point in time I would have 1 million cars running on the road. Now
Mhm.
out of this 1 million, what is the data that you are going to store? Whether it is DynamoDB, whether it is Mongo, whether it is SQL, anything. Okay. So what is the data that you're going to store? Through that, we could try to estimate that what would be the data size that would be needed, right? How big my
Great.
database would be. Okay. So can you
Got it.
try that?
Yeah, so basically, I would prefer to use all the data in the format of JSON, and
Okay.
so the JSON for 10 million user, sorry, 1 million user, would go around like in GBs. If I say about a day or so. and
Hmm.
it could go on to like TVs if the data go if the data is stored for each and every second, right? So for single day, I think it would be lots of GBs, like maybe around 100 GB or so.
Okay.
Uh,
So
yeah,
let's do one thing. Let's do one thing. We know that we have 1 million users. Okay.
right.
What would be the size of a single event? Let's try to compute that size of a single event, and then we will try to compute what is the data size that we need. Okay, because as of now, it's everything on a very, very high level, right?
Right, right. So maybe we'll need to define keys, right? So if we are going
Okay.
to map the ambient temperature, we'll have ID.
Hmm.
Uh, we'll then have the actual temperature,
Okay.
and we'll have some. So this will be in a separate table, right? So we'll have to map it to some user table.
Let's say there is
Uh,
user ID. Okay.
yeah. Apart from this, we might need to maintain some flags, right? Uh, as in, like, if it is in the threshold, if it is a current, if the previous threshold was right, and if the current threshold was right, so we can maintain some status flags over there.
Hmm.
Um, These are the four which I could think of.
Anything else that you would like to add?
Uh, I'm not able to think anything else apart from this.
Won't you need timestamp?
Yeah, sure. Timestamp will be there.
Okay. So can we try a basic estimation as to what would be the size of one object? Very basic estimation, high level.
It will be very less. Maybe for one object will be uh, less than a byte, or I don't know.
No, well, let's say 30,
4
40
bytes.
bytes.
Yeah, yeah, 30, 40
Let's
bytes.
take
Correct.
50 bytes. 50 bytes would be more than sufficient.
Sure.
Okay. So you have user ID. One user could have multiple cars, right?
Correct.
So I think it should be something like my vehicle ID.
Got it.
Mhm. Okay. Now let's say, as we agreed that let's say this data is around 50 bytes,
Correct.
right? So then you multiply that by 1 million, right? There are 1 million events sent per second. So that would
Correct.
hardly be 50 megabytes of data that you are sending per second, right?
Per second. Correct.
50 MB. That's not a huge number.
Right.
Okay.
But
So
if we go on for like a day, uh,
mhm,
so like for 60 minutes, it will be like 120. Sorry, 1.2 GB. Correct.
mhm. So you can multiply this by 86400, right? At the total
Right.
number of second within a day, or it would be
Correct.
10 to the power 5. So that,
Yeah.
like, can we try a rough estimation? That's around 10 million multiplied by 10 to the power 5. So that would be 10 GB and 100 GB, I guess.
Right. For a day.
I might be wrong. You can try a competition. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. It will be like 100 GB for a day.
Okay, so it's not a very big number, right? We have 100 GB of data
Right.
per day. Okay, and for how much time would you want to keep this data?
Yeah, that's where the question that was I was going to ask next, because
Okay.
yeah, so we might not need to store data for more than 3 months. Even 3 months, I think of, is quite large, but
Hmm.
we can refill that amount whenever there is a new, uh, maybe new month, or engine is refueled or something like that, right?
So, okay, let's think it from other perspective. Why to even store this data for 3 months? What is the end use of this data?
Uh, So if we just talk about the temperature, it doesn't make sense to store for 3 months. But if
Okay.
I talk about the metrics, as in like I added fuel at this point of time, and after 3 months, these are my metrics. So we might help that data, right?
So what is the end goal that we are trying to achieve from here? We want to send user certain notification,
Correct.
right? If something goes bad. Okay.
Okay.
But those notification would have certain time window, right? A notification would be okay only if you send it in more or less real time, or let's say within 5 or 10 minutes window. So
Okay.
do you think
So
we
if
need to store this data for 30 days?
no, so if the use case is just to provide the notification,
Mhm.
we might not want to store data more than 24 hours.
Okay.
Right? So we'll need only 100 GB data. Uh, Not more
Mhm.
than that will be stored.
Okay. So then do we need sharding?
No. So in that case, we can just use a simple SQL
Mhm.
query. We might not need to add cost over servers.
Okay.
Uh, so apart from this, we'll need uh, a microservice which could handle this logic, right? The sensor and
Okay.
conversion of data.
Mhm.
So I'm really bad at naming conventions. Maybe a
Everyone is. That's the challenging
so
problem of software engineering.
yeah. Every time I name a service, somebody tell me why the name is.
Right.
Apart from this, we might also need a service to handle sensors, but I would not add any other service because it could
Mhm.
be handled from the temperature service itself, right? So we will need
So,
sensors only.
mhm, rather than, can we call it as, let's say, ingestion service? And I'm giving you a suggestion here.
Okay.
It could be any data, right? It could be temperature, later on it
Yeah.
could be pressure, it could be anything. So let's say something like data ingestion service.
Okay. Yeah, that is a better one.
Mhm. Okay, perfect. So now we have a very high level idea that hey, these are the components that we need to have in our system design. Question is, how would you be sending the notification?
Yeah.
That's the end goal,
So
right? We need to send
correct.
the notification to user.
Correct. So once this data is uh, calculated, so we might need a notification service to send that
Mhm.
notification,
Okay.
right? And for that, we could use web sockets to send the notifications.
Okay.
Maybe.
So
And
you
there could
said
be
that.
other approaches, but I haven't
Mhm.
used any other than web sockets
Mhm.
before, so I'm not aware
So you
how
said
else.
that we need certain computation, right? What is
Right.
that computation and where would that computation take place?
So computation would be like calculating the metrics from the sensors and basically tell the user that this is my threshold, and
Mhm.
if it gets over that, I need to notify. So this whole logic should be there in data ingestion service is what I think of.
Okay. Can we take a concrete example? Like we have taken a concrete example there where we are measuring temperature or like where we are ingesting temperature. Okay. So can you take a concrete example as to when would you notify a user that, hey, your temperature is up or something like that? A concrete
Uh,
example. And then we will build our design on in and around that.
Okay, so maybe let me take an example where I am in India. So temperature is always very high,
Okay.
the climatic temperature, and some of my car parts are not properly fueled enough. Like the friction
Mhm.
is very more. So
Mhm.
obviously the engine temperature place after a point of time. So let's say the user is driving, and in the middle of the driving, the car engine temperature is way too high than how it should be. So it will start deteriorating the part. So at that point of time, this calculation will be made that this is the bare minimum car temperature, and it is going above this. So I'll notify the user, and that can also be
So,
configured by
okay,
user.
let's write this example. Let's say. that we send user notification when average engine temperature is more than 150 degrees centigrade for last 10 minutes. Okay, that's a concrete example, right? And it seems a feasible one, right? Let's try to solve this one and then we will try to expand onto our design.
So what is the threshold you mentioned? Uh,
150 degrees centigrade. I guess this would be okay.
yeah,
Engine
this
temperature
should.
would be way above this. Okay, so more than 150 for last 10 minutes.
So this is what I could think of for the components. Shall we move ahead with the diagram?
Yeah, we can. So I think Rishit has a question, and that's a very valid question. You
Okay.
are seeing that question, right?
Actually, I'll have to switch screen.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm not able to find the question. It's
Okay,
in the
so
comment.
let me read that out. Yeah. So rather than storing the data, could we just process the data stream as it is received by the backend? Because we only need to alert the user when the engine oil temperature crosses the threshold.
Okay. We could do that, but what we're doing here is calculating the temperature for last 10 minutes. If for the last 10 minutes this threshold breaks, then only we do
Mhm.
that, because there could be some external factor which could provide this insights like, oh, the temperature is high for maybe like for a second or 2 seconds. So we don't want to bombard user with such information. Only once the stable data is reached, that could be like in 10 minutes, then only we should notify user. This is what
So
my
yeah,
thought process
like
was.
since yeah, I would also somewhat agree to this because we need, let's say, this just one use case. In the other use case, it may be like, let's say, pressure. We don't fill up the like we do not like check the pressure quite often, right? So with different use cases, the aggregation could be at a different level. So my opinion would be that we can store it for some time. Like let's say the temperature here is, so we are getting an average of 10 minutes temperature. We can store this information for 1 hour, and then we could have certain other things which I'm expecting it from you, that how that processing pipeline will work, right? So and you can think of it like a temporary storage. It's not a permanent storage where we are storing the information for a year or 5 year. Okay, those are I don't think is required in this use case. Okay, but yeah, we need to store this information for some time.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
So I am a bit confused here. So let's say we are talking about storing data only for 10 minutes. So do we need to store data for 24 hours?
You need to answer that.
I mean,
You are the
we could have
designer.
a temporary. So I think that we should not have any more DB. We could have a. I mean, if we need for the 10 minutes only, we could have some other temporary storage, or maybe
Okay.
cache to handle such requests, right?
Okay. Good choice.
And but my question is, do we need data for 24 hours at all? Uh,
You can
is
reason it
there
out
use case?
whether you need that or not.
Okay.
Okay. As per the present scenario, do you need that? Would that be needed, or can we do something better?
Yeah, I think I can think of only SQL DB, because right now, because even for 1 second we have some kind of a data, and for 10 minutes also it will be in uh, GBs itself. Uh, Maybe you could store a data for 24 hours.
What was our calculation for 24 hours? How much data?
100 GB.
100 GB for 24 hours. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I think single cache might not be able to handle this.
Hmm.
I mean, we'll need a lot of costing to do that.
Obviously. So caching might not be a good choice due to cache, but again, here we are talking about 24 hours, right? In
Right,
this
but for
use
10
case,
minutes
let's
you could
say,
have a cache for storing data for 10 minutes. Last 10 minutes you could have cache so that we can get better response time.
mhm. Okay, let's move forward because we are running out of time and it's a
Okay.
very, very basic design as of now yet.
Start creating the objects. So I'll have my user here.
Mhm,
User may be car.
mhm.
Uh, Next would be
Let's name it vehicle because a
okay.
user could have multiple vehicles.
Correct. Okay. I'll have my API gateway and load balancer over here. So I'm not adding API gateway, but first it will go through the API gateway. But I'm writing load balancer directly.
That's fine.
Next component was my server, and I'll have this data ingestion service,
Mhm. Let's call it DI service. Yeah, that's fine.
and I'll have my notification service.
Okay.
I have another component. Please bear with me. I just started this, so my
Yeah,
diagram skills are also bad.
not a problem.
This will be my DB.
Mhm,
I will also have caching here.
mhm. Why do we need cache as of now?
Because we a user will need 10 minutes data more frequently uh, than the
Why
whole
they would
24-hour
need
data.
10 minutes data? Because we just need to notify user, right? We are not giving them any data,
Yeah,
right?
but for the calculation itself, so
Mhm.
this service can take data from the cache for last 10 minutes.
Why? Like it could query the DB, right?
Yeah,
Because then you
it
would
could
have to
query DB.
maintain the data at two places, right? And caching is useful when you have read heavy system, right?
Hmm. Got it.
Here in the scenario, it seems like it's a very, very write intensive application, right? You are
Got it.
capturing a lot of events and one in, let's say, a million could turn into a notification. So
Got
why
it.
to
Got it.
use cache?
Got it. My bad. So I understood your point. So let's say if you have a scenario like Facebook or any other, will
Mhm.
need those kind of read heavy, but here we are write heavy and doing read only like in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, got it. So in that case, we'll have just one DB. Uh, these are the components, right?
Mhm. So we will try to deep dive into each one of the component. I don't think we have much of a time. Okay, there are a lot of open questions here, to be honest. So let's firstly dig into the load balancer part.
Hmm.
Okay, so you have used ELB, right?
Right.
But any kind of load balancer or any kind of a component would have certain threshold because at the end of it, it would be limited by the hardware, right?
Got it. Right.
So in our use case, we have around 1 million requests per second, right?
Right.
Now, if you see the pattern, mostly vehicles would be used by person who goes to office and come back from office. So even though on an average we may have 1 million requests per second, but during the morning time and during the evening time, there could be a huge spike,
Right.
right? And for the sake of example, let's say a single load balancer could route 1 million requests at any point in time. Okay.
Mhm.
And your peak load could be, let's say, 5 to 7 million per second.
Okay.
Okay. So how do you handle that scenario? You're getting
Yeah.
my point, right?
So got it. Got it. So what a configuration Amazon ELB has is we could use multiple load balancers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if you are using multiple load balancer, if you are saying there like there is just single load balancer, right? So we can have multiple load balancer in place here. I'm not drawing it right now,
Okay.
but yeah. And if the one load balancer gets too heavy, we could use consistent hashing to reroute our data to multiple load balancers, right? And
Okay.
those load balancer can have
So my
maybe
question
like
here is,
not need
my
consistent
question here
hashing.
is, yeah.
We could have, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So my question here is, uh, as of now, we are breaching the limit of a single load balancer. Okay.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I know that, taking an assumption here, that one load balancer could handle 1 million requests per second.
Okay,
Okay. And my peak threshold is 7 million requests. So I'm pretty much sure that one load balancer would not be sufficient.
right,
Okay. And
right.
for the time being, let's just think that you don't know about ELB. Okay.
Okay,
Even if you know, then how would have that component be built up? Okay.
yeah.
So
So
you need
for
at least 7 concurrent load balancer, right? 7 load balancer running in parallel.
right.
How would you route the request from vehicle?
Okay, so that's why I was saying that we'll have multiple load balancers in place, and for that we'll use DNS rerouting to handle all the requests
Mhm.
and to maintain this pipe. So if one load
Okay.
balancer is more via DNS rerouting, we can reroute it to some other load balancers in
So
place.
basically, you would have a single endpoint, and that would be backed by 7 or 8, like 10 different load balancers. That's fine. That's a great approach. Okay. Now let's also, I think we discussed this use case where you don't have internet connectivity, right?
Right,
So how
right.
would you handle that scenario?
Yeah. So for that we'll need one more DB,
Hmm.
which will be internal DB storage or some kind of storage. I'm not aware what storage we should use inside car, but there should be some kind of DB.
Some kind of an embedded database.
Right, right.
Okay.
And it should store data. Let's say for it can store data up to 1 hour. I'm saying maybe a huge amount of data, but still it can
Depending
store data for
depending
like
on the device,
correct.
like storage availability. Okay.
Right.
And how would your flow look like? Like, let's say if my vehicle emits an event, then what happens?
Yeah. So let's say if my vehicle emits an event, it will store the data in this DB. Plus,
Hmm.
it will go via load balancer and store the data in this DB. And
Why
let's
two
say if my
things? Why
uh,
two things? Yeah.
yeah. So because let's say if I'm unable to store data into the actual DB,
Hmm.
in that case I need to pull that data from this DB. So for each and every hour, I need to store the 1 hour data inside of this DB, and the
Hmm.
whole data should be stored here as well for each and every second, right?
So, don't you think that it's a huge additional overhead on the vehicle sensor itself? It would be storing data, it would be checking internet connection, it would be sending the request, and then, like, there are a lot of complication there. So wouldn't it be okay, like, you treat that DB as a queue? Like, when any event is emitted from the vehicle, it is just dumped to the DB. So the sensor part of the vehicle would be pretty fast. It is storing information locally,
Right,
right? And then
right.
you could have certain listener on the DB which will try to send the data to your load balancer. If it fails, fair enough, it will not delete the data from the queue. If it doesn't fail, that's fine. If it fails, the data resides in the DB. Wouldn't that be a good example of separation of concern?
Yeah, that would
I'm
be
just
good.
handling one part.
Right. But that event listener will reside where? Will it be like
In the
inside
vehicle
vehicle,
itself.
right? Okay.
Inside vehicle itself. There are two processes. One is emitting event and dumping into DB. Another process, listening to the DB and sending to the load balancer. Right.
Right.
That would
Right.
decouple both the things.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
So we talked about load balancer. We talked about DB decoupling at the local DB layer. Now you have this data ingestion service. Okay. Now the data ingestion service is capturing event at, let's say, 1 million requests per second. That's something a number, right? That's a huge number, right?
Right.
So at the DB front, the backend DB, so what are your understanding? Which kind of a DB would you prefer here and why?
Uh, I would prefer SQL DB over here,
Okay.
just
Any
because,
reason?
yeah, just because our data is more structured
Hmm?
in a sense where we need to maintain all the vehicles and store data in a bit. So it will be easier to implement that data in SQL, and also the cost will be less for SQL than Mongo.
Okay. Uh, so one question here. So have you heard about the storage engines within SQL?
Uh,
Or do you know the data structure which is used for storing all this information in databases? What's the common data structure that is being used?
Actually, I'm not aware at this point of time.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. That's not a problem. Okay. So like outside this system design interview, there are a lot of different kind of DB that are suitable for this purposes. You might have heard about time series databases, and the data here seems like a time series data. Okay, so those
Yeah.
would be a better choice than a SQL. Okay, and
Got it.
there are other databases also which are very much efficient for storing information which are due to this high write throughput system. So SQL might not be a very good choice here because we have very huge number of writes per second. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We can discuss those. Now
Yeah.
let's talk about the data transformation from this DI service to the notification service.
Mhm. Yeah. So basically, we'll need.
How would you
Yeah.
do that? Yeah.
Right. So we'll need to draw a sensor also here. So once the data is collected from the, sorry, we can take this data from the vehicle itself. We don't need to another component here. So once we receive this data, we'll store the data from the timestamp, right? So let's say my data for last 10 minutes is reaching the threshold. So what I'll do
Mhm.
is I'll pass this notification via
So
notification
how do
service.
you know that the average has been breached? Where is that computation happening?
So inside of this DB, I'll have the all the data, right? So
Mhm.
via the data, I need to write the business logic in this DI service,
Okay.
and it will calculate all the data for last 10 minutes timestamp, and it will say that, oh, so the average temperature limit is more than this particular limit. So in that case,
So
I'll
won't you
send.
think that that's an additional overhead on the DI service? It is already handling 1 million requests per second. So
Mhm.
you should want to make the system pretty faster. Now, if on every request you are querying the DB, getting last 10 minutes data, performing certain computation, and then interacting with notification service, that is bound to fail, right? That will not
Okay.
provide you the throughput that we need here, right? So
Okay.
can we do something better?
Uh, So maybe we can transfer this all of these activities to notification service.
Okay. How would you do that?
So via notification service, I'll call the DB and calculate all of this business logic, and then send the data to this vehicle. And this will be called every 10 minutes, like for every last 10 minutes, it will calculate.
Every 10 minutes for all the vehicles.
Yeah,
Just think
uh,
think through it.
yeah, it will create a lot of overhead here as well. But we have this load balancer, right? So we'll have multiple servers attached to this. for this
Okay.
DI service and notification services. So since we are having multiple servers, all the load will be equally distributed, right?
Hmm.
So that
Okay,
way it can
so
handle.
let me try to let me try to structure it from a different perspective. So when you are just storing one information, let's say it takes around 10 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. But then if you're performing a lot of additional computation in the DI service itself, like
Mhm.
querying a database, then performing certain analytics on top of it, firstly, there is a chance that your code could break at any point in time. Am I right?
Got it.
When when
Right, right.
when you're performing a lot of operation, it could break at any point in time and there could be discrepancies. Okay. The second thing is that will shoot up your response time for every write request. Okay. So for every write request, let's say your response time shoots by 100 millisecond, which means you are reducing the throughput of your DI service by a factor of 2. You will need twice the number of this data ingestion service. So that's an additional overhead here. Also, another point to note here is that since we need notification at 10-minute interval, do we even need to send all the notification per second from the vehicle?
It will be like in 10 minutes only.
Not 10 minutes, we could take certain leisure threshold, like we can take it from 1 minute, or we can batch at vehicle at 1 minute and then
Right,
send all the batch request uh,
right.
to my load balancer and DI service every minute. Okay, so that could be another choice. But I would still be skeptical about computing all of this at the DI service level. So my like thought process here is like DI service should be there just for ingestion. That's why it's a DI service, right?
Okay.
So can we do better, or like do you think there is an alternative approach?
Alternative would be is to have one more service will
Okay.
do this calculation, or use it inside the notification service itself. But since notification service again semantically does its own part, so maybe if we can have a separate service which does this basic computation itself.
Hmm. And how would they interact? Like if there is another service, let's say sir, some computation service or notification computation service. Okay, how would they interact? How do the event which is stored in the database, and how does that service know that, hey, now I need to recompute?
So for that, I think the new service which will be there, it needs to have a WebSocket connection established, so that both of them will be connected throughout their
Okay.
timeline, right? So one approach could be polling, but polling again has its own disadvantages. So
Mhm.
I think WebSocket would be better to implement such scenarios.
WebSocket from where to where? Like where do
Uh,
you want that WebSocket to be placed?
so from vehicle to this new service, computational service.
Why? Like, is there any two-way data transfer? I don't see that.
Uh, so basically, we need to transfer data from server to vehicle, right? And we'll
No,
have
no,
right.
no. We just need to send a notification,
Mhm.
right? Once they reach that threshold. So those notification could be, let's say, once in a month. So why would you
Okay.
keep a WebSocket connection open for 1 month
Yeah, makes
just
sense.
to send one notification?
Mhm. Makes sense. So maybe a normal HTTP connection would be good, like we have for every other service, and have this computational service. Right?
Okay.
Maybe service again valid naming, and we'll fetch data from DI service, some of the data,
Again,
and
then
from DP.
DI service have two tasks. It is
Yeah,
dumping the
yeah,
data in the DB and it is sending the data to CI
correct,
service.
correct.
What
So all the
if
logic needs
what
to
if that,
be,
yeah,
yeah. Uh,
and how would you get the data from DB to this computation service? Like, is there any mechanism that you know of?
Currently, I don't know of anything else than calling this, making a batch request, or if some kind of event bus, which will
Hmm.
call this service every 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
it will fetch data for all the users and pass notification here.
Okay. So obviously there are like better approaches to do this, but I would say this was a very very nice attempt, and we tried to explore a lot of parts. And to be honest, rather than a system design, it was like a knowledge sharing session. Okay, so
Yeah,
in real world interview, you might not get this many hints, and
right.
where most of the time the interviewer are dumb, they would not provide you any hint. So
Correct.
it was fun. We are exceeding our time limit. Okay, and obviously there are a lot of improvisation that we can make here in the design, but it may be like let's say a very starting design, and we can always do a lot better here. Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess that would be all, Mohit. It was really really nice interacting to you, and I am glad that it was your first interview and you performed so well. So
Thank
cheers
you
for
so
that.
much for helping me out as well, because this was my first system design. This is the very first time I've been designing like for such kind of problem. So thank you for helping me out, and it was quite a lot of knowledgeable session for me. And maybe it's just the start for me improving.
Yeah, thanks, Mohit. Okay, so
Thank you.
that would be all from us, guys. You were a really nice audience. Hi, Amit. Welcome back.
Hi, hi. I mean, honestly speaking, I love this discussion. I was reading a chat as well as I was listening to the discussions, because what happened that most of the times that we see that on internet we have scripted interviews, right? Where interviewer and interview both know the answer before the stream, but as Mohit know that we did not discuss anything about the what it is going to be discussed today, so that it becomes a real interview experience. And if we do this, I mean, the quality of discussion becomes very very good. And Mohit, thank you for being such a support. I mean, I understand it's very tough to go live and answering questions, because then
Everyone is judging you.
everyone is judging you, right, right. So
Yeah, actually
that's the
my
problem.
even my leads would be seeing this, but I wanted to have this scenario to be like real world, because I have been giving most of the client interviews as well for my company. And this kind of pressure I needed that, because there's a lot of pressure when we work in IT industry. So once we go live, I'll be very much experienced in handling pressure as well. So this was my main motive to join this.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I have one question from Rishi. He's asking, like, before learning system design, what we need to learn before?
That's a very interesting question, Rishi. So I'll answer that question. My thought process here is system design, like people have made hype out of it. That hey, there's a system design round, and you just like shatter by just listening to that. I'm going to take a system design round. So in general, there are 20, 15 to 20 components that you should be aware about. Like let's say you should be aware about load balancer. We discussed briefly about load balancer. There are caching mechanism, there are databases, there is DNS. You should know about the internals of DNS. We discussed that how you scale load balancer using DNS routing. Okay, then there is queuing mechanism, there are CDN, there are cache. Okay, so there are 10 to 20 components which you should be aware about, and then you should practice real world system design interview. Now once you have gone through the basic level system design interview, then you should try intermediate level system design interview, where you should try to compare and contrast between databases, right? We tried deep diving into the database front, but again, like since it was a very basic problem, we didn't went deep into it. But let's say if you're 3 or 4 years experience, 5 year experience, then the interviewer would expect you to know about different kind of databases. Like SQL databases are generally based out of B plus tree. Okay, what is LSM tree? Okay, what is time series database? What is columnar database? So the discussions could be around that. Then uh, in some interview they can deep dive into the storage layer, how a file is stored on the disk, how can you build S3, how could you build Google Map. Okay, so it should be a step by step process, and it may take some time to comprehend the nitty gritty details of each one of the component. So just practice that out, start small, and just be there. Okay, and then I think you can crack system design interviews.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. So there are not many questions, but Jay, I have filtered out very common questions from system design that most of the, especially college student or the freshers who have just 1 year of experience as a SD, uh, they want to know whether in the college they need to understand the high level design concepts because they are more into data structures, algorithm, learning programming languages, and they think that.
As
Yeah.
just coming to that, so generally this is the trend that I have seen for fresher. They don't directly ask system design questions. Okay, so generally system design questions are asked when you are there in industry for at least 2 to 3 years. Okay, so that is where system design kicks in. But then if you ask this question to yourself, what is system design? It's not a computer science course, right? It is an amalgamation of, let's say, operating systems, computer networks, database systems, and everything. So that's a practical implementation of what you learned during your college years. Okay, so rather than just focusing on DSA, because DSA is the first two to three rounds that you have to do. Okay, you should also be focusing on these concepts. You should be understanding how network works, or what are the important concept of OS, and those would be then framed in a system design question. So initially, for the first 2 to 3 years, beside databases, try to like learn the basic concepts of computer engineering, and then try like understanding the scalable components. What are the scalable components in the market? How do they work? Try to explore that. So that would be my suggestion for people who are fresher or just graduating out of college, or even 1 or 2 years experience people.
Right, right, and it's not always about giving interviews. Sometimes, as a computer science engineer, you need to understand how system works. I mean, I was wondering when a few days back Facebook was down and due to some DNS issue, and then a lot of people were reading and sharing very useful information. But I mean, as an engineer, if you want to understand things, how things work behind the scene, then obviously, I mean, you should have a curiosity just besides preparing for interview. So thank you so much, Jay, and thank you so much, Mohit, for giving your time today. And to the audience, I mean, happy Dasera, enjoy the festival, and if you have queries, I mean, feel free to fill the form that is given in the chat. And if you're watching this stream after the live session, I mean, you can always go to the description form, right? And then share your queries. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. Take care and bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
Bye bye.
Happy Dashera.